The Varnak Empire didn't fear much. For over 200 years, they swept through galaxies like fire through dry leaves. Planet after planet fell, civilizations collapsed, and resistance crumbled like old stone under their weight. Their ships were massive, living fortresses bred for war. Their soldiers, genetically engineered, stood twice the size of humans and had no word for mercy in their guttural language. They had never heard of Earth. Until they did. Humanity had just begun to stretch its fingers beyond the solar system. A few scattered colonies here and there, Mars, Europa, a mining outpost in Proxima Centauri. We weren't a threat. We were ants playing with rockets. But the Varnak had protocols. Eliminate before infestation, they called it. They didn't even send a fleet, just one war cruiser, the Runvak, and a small escort squad. Enough to wipe out any new species and file a report. They were expecting another easy cleanse. Then came the Solace. Not the biggest ship. Not the most advanced. Hell, even back then it was running on half-patched software and an engine core older than some of its crew. But it had something the Varnak couldn't measure. Captain Elijah Rourke. They first encountered each other near the edge of the Gliesa system. The Varnak vessels dropped out of warp, their hulls black as void and bristling with weapons. The Solace was alone, stationed there for basic patrol duty, just eyes on the edge of human territory. Rourke didn't run. "Tell command we've got company," he said, calm as ever, lighting a cigarette in the command chair as red lights started flashing. "And prep everything we've got. We're holding this damn line." His officers looked at each other. "Captain, that's a Varnak cruiser. I know what it is," Rourke said, his voice steady. "You see another ship here ready to make a stand?" "No, sir." "Then it's us." The Solace launched every drone, armed every torpedo, and powered its main cannon, an old fusion lance that hadn't been used in 5 years. The crew braced. Everyone knew it was a suicide mission. Everyone except Rourke. Or maybe he knew and didn't care. The Varnak opened fire first. Blue plasma arcs tore through space, lighting up the void. Shields screamed under the pressure. One of the outer hull compartments burst into flame, and still Rourke barked orders like a man playing chess instead of facing death. "Divert power from the life support on Deck 4, he shouted. "I want those damn guns back online." He made every shot count. The Solace ducked, dodged, and struck back like a rabid animal. Smaller Varnak escorts were the first to go, caught off guard by the aggressive tactics. One exploded into a cloud of fire and debris. The other was crippled and drifted off into the black, its engines dead. Then it was just the Runvak and one human ship. Rourke stood up from his chair, watching the colossal cruiser loom on the screen. "Let's dance, you oversized lizard." The Runvak underestimated him. It moved in slow, steady, powerful. It wasn't built for quick kills. It expected fear, surrender, hopelessness. But Rourke didn't give them that. He gave them hell. The Solace rammed forward in a move no sane captain would have tried, slid under the Varnak's belly, and fired 2 torpedoes point blank at its undercarriage. The resulting explosion cracked through the Runvak's lower shield barrier, and for the first time in decades, a Varnak cruiser limped. Rourke grinned, blood on his forehead, sparks flying behind him. Welcome to humanity, bastards. And out there, across the stars, as military channels lit up and desperate calls were made, one message repeated over and over: "The line is holding." The damage to the Runvak wasn't fatal, but it was humiliating. The Varnak didn't just conquer, they obliterated. Entire star systems had vanished under their iron grip. And yet here, at the edge of some forgotten system orbiting a yellow dwarf, one primitive ship had managed to tear through their armor. Not because it was stronger, but because it was angry. The Solace didn't retreat. It couldn't. The engines were overheating, the left stabilizer was half blown off, and 2 decks were without power. Medbay was filled with groaning bodies, and the lights flickered like the ship itself was gasping for breath. But Rourke stood tall in the middle of it all. His first officer, Lieutenant Vega, had a nasty burn across her cheek, and a makeshift sling around her arm, but her eyes were still sharp. "Captain, we need to retreat to Titan. We're running on fumes." "And if we go, they'll burn every colony between here and Earth," Rourke said, scanning the status screen. "They need time. We're gonna buy it." "How? With prayers and duct tape?" Rourke gave a tired smirk. "Prayers are optional. Duct tape's holding engineering together, actually." The crew laughed, a bitter, cracked sound. But it helped. They were soldiers, sure, trained to fight. But this? This was survival against a goddamn monster, and their captain, somehow, still had fight in him. The Runvak didn't make the same mistake twice. Its next assault came hard and precise. Plasma beams lanced toward the Solus with surgical accuracy. The shields flared white, then collapsed entirely. Hull breaches opened on decks 3 and 5. A firestorm devoured the lower cargo bay. 27 crew members lost their lives in an instant. Rourke didn't flinch. He marched to the tactical display and started plotting an intercept course. "They think we're dying," he said, half to himself. "Let's show them what dying humans can do." The Solus didn't fight back with strength. It fought back with desperation. Rourke ordered every last warhead in the arsenal prepped for close-range detonation. He turned the ship into a flying minefield. "They come too close," he told the gunnery chief. "Light 'em up. I want that cruiser to choke on our fury." When the Runvak moved in for the kill, expecting another easy demolition, it was met with wave after wave of shrapnel, molten debris, and kamikaze drones screaming across its flanks. It didn't stop the cruiser, but it slowed it. And in war, even a few minutes can change everything. Because while Rourke was holding the line, the rest of humanity was waking up. Earth's High Command received his last transmission, partially scrambled and glitching, but the message was clear. "We are not backing down. If this is our grave, we'll bury them with us." Those words hit Earth like a bolt of lightning. Civilian networks broadcast the message worldwide. Colonists on Mars, miners on Europa, freighter pilots and ex-Marines, everyone watched the lone ship standing against the impossible. Rourke wasn't just buying time. He was lighting a fire in the heart of a species. On the bridge of the Solus, Rourke wiped sweat from his brow and glanced at the cracked viewport. The Runvak was damaged again, scorch marks along its side, flickering lights along its underhull. It wasn't used to this kind of fight. It wasn't used to being challenged. "They'll call for reinforcements soon," Vega said. "So will we," Rourke replied. "And for the first time in history, humanity might actually show up." He didn't know it yet, but halfway across the system, a half-retired dreadnought called the Vanguard was warming up its engines. A Martian war clan had intercepted the signal and were already en route. Even a civilian convoy from Saturn, armed with illegal railguns and an unhealthy amount of rage, was jumping in. The Varnak had awakened something they didn't understand. Not a war machine, not a military force. They'd awakened humanity. The Runvak paused its advance. Not out of fear. It didn't understand that emotion, but confusion. This resistance was illogical. According to its war protocols, species in early galactic stages lacked the ability to respond to overwhelming force. They submitted. They scattered. But the Solus had not only resisted, it had inflicted damage. Worse, more human ships were appearing on long-range scans. Crude by Varnak standards, unorganized and mismatched. But they were coming, and fast. Aboard the Solus, Rourke stood over the command console, eyes bloodshot, face smeared with ash. His voice cracked over the internal comms. "All hands, listen up, we got incoming, friendlies! They're answering the call!" A beat of silence, then cheers, muted by fatigue, grief, but real. It was hope, the kind you taste after you've swallowed nothing but dread. Lieutenant Vega leaned over the display. 3 ships just dropped out of warp, the Vanguard, the Osiris, and, oh God, that's the Iron Widow. That's a Martian War Clan flagship. Rourke grinned through the pain in his side. Tell him the line still holds. Outside, space shimmered as the newcomers fell into formation behind the battered Solus. The Vanguard, twice its size, armed with mass drivers older than Earth's constitution, broadcast a single line on all channels. To whoever's knocking, Earth's not home. Try hell. The Runvak's command AI adjusted its threat assessment. Humans were no longer classified as developing species. They were upgraded to disruptive force. It responded with escalation. From hyperspace, it summoned reinforcements. 2 additional destroyer-class Varnak vessels. Sleek, jagged monsters with blood-red cores. Their arrival sent ripples through the stars like a deep growl in the dark. On the Solus, warning sirens howled again. The crew didn't flinch this time. Rourke looked toward the viewport. So, they brought friends. Looks like it's a party, Vega muttered, buckling into her seat. The Iron Widow moved first, breaking formation and blasting toward the closest Varnak destroyer like a missile of rage. Martians had a reputation for being unhinged. They wore their scars like medals, their weapons illegal in every civilized system. They didn't care. They'd seen what the Varnak did to a settlement near Ceres, burned it from orbit, no survivors. The Martians hadn't forgotten. They never did. The clash was chaos. Lasers lit up the void. Metal screamed and exploded in silence. The Osiris flanked left, peppering the second destroyer with railgun slugs. The Vanguard unleashed a volley of fusion torpedoes that punched holes through enemy shielding. And still, in the middle of it all, holding the front like a stubborn ghost, stood the Solus. Half dead, leaking coolant but unmoving. They're focusing on us again, Vega called. That cruiser wants us gone. It's ignoring the others. Because we embarrassed it, Rourke muttered. Good. Let's piss it off some more. He keyed into engineering. How's my cannon, Voss? Chief Voss coughed through static. Held together by spit duct tape and a prayer to Newton, sir. That's enough. The fusion lance hadn't been fired since the first volley. Now it hummed with a soft, threatening glow. Rourke narrowed his eyes at the Runvak on screen. Line it up. I want to punch through its eye socket. As the Solus maneuvered, dodging plasma bolts with sluggish grace, the crew felt something shift. They weren't prey anymore. They were the anchor, the symbol. Other human ships were arriving, smaller vessels, armed freighters, even a damn asteroid tug with explosives strapped to its side. Humanity wasn't organized, but they were relentless, angry, united. In a galaxy used to folding civilizations like napkins, this didn't make sense. But that's what made humans dangerous. They didn't follow the script. The Solus reached firing position. Rourke stood, one hand on the control. Fire! The fusion lance unleashed a beam of raw energy, slicing across the stars and tearing into the Runvak's forward hull. Armor buckled. The beam didn't destroy the ship, but it hurt it. Again. The Varnak couldn't understand why this kept happening. Neither could the stars, but every human watching the feed from Earth, Mars, and beyond knew the answer. Because that's what we do. We hold the line. A groan rippled through the Solus as the fusion lance overheated. Lights dimmed, panels sparked, and a small explosion rocked the lower engine bay. But the crew stayed at their stations. They had crossed a threshold now, past fear, past survival. What kept them going wasn't orders. It was vengeance, pride, the need to show the galaxy that humanity, battered and scattered, would not be erased without a scream. Outside, the Runvak reeled from the blast. Its forward plating was scarred and molten. The Varnak captain, if it could be called that, reeled back from the input streams. Its neural interface was flooded with confusion. Why hadn't the Solus died? Why had it struck back harder? Varnak culture had no word for perseverance. Inside the human fleet, chaos found rhythm. The vanguard circled wide, drawing fire from the destroyers. The Iron Widow had lost half its plating but continued to hammer its target with relentless precision, Martian war chants blaring across the comms. And the Solus? Still leading. Captain Rourke didn't sit anymore. He paced the bridge like a caged animal, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the screens. Sweat dripped from his temple. "Status on the Runvak?" "Badly damaged, sir," Vega replied. "Its primary weapons are still online, but its shields are dropping below 30%. "Then we're not done yet." The Varnak weren't used to fighting enemies that kept attacking after their own ship started falling apart. Their destroyers shifted tactics, attempting to break through the flanks and hit the Earthbound colonies directly. But they didn't get far, because now humanity wasn't just reacting, they were retaliating. From Saturn, a convoy of mining vessels entered the fight, loaded with makeshift warheads built from drilling charges. They weren't military grade, but they didn't have to be. They swarmed the Varnak flank like hornets, slamming into armor, ripping holes through cruisers piece by piece. On Earth, the broadcast was everywhere. Schools shut down, traffic stopped. No one spoke. Everyone just watched this one, ragged ship still holding point, still refusing to move aside. The Solus, a symbol. "Captain," Vega called, eyes wide. "We're getting a transmission from Earth Defense Command." Rourke raised an eyebrow. About time they joined the conversation. "Put it through." A voice came through, distorted but urgent. "Captain Rourke, this is General Elena Corvinus. You've bought us hours we didn't have. Reinforcements are en route. Heavy cruisers, destroyer support, ETA 20 minutes. Can you hold?" He smiled, voice low and firm. "We've been holding. Just get here before we run out of ship." Cheers broke out across the bridge. Not loud, not wild, just tight, hard claps of relief. They weren't alone anymore. But 20 minutes was still 20 minutes. And the Runvak wasn't giving up. It powered forward, cutting through the void like a wounded beast on a killing run. Plasma turrets lit up, carving through the mining convoy, vaporizing 2 ships in seconds. One destroyer exploded, taking a section of Martian fighters with it. The Iron Widow limped back, engines flickering. The human line faltered. On the Solus, Lieutenant Vega shouted, "We've got a breach on Deck 6. Hull integrity failing." "Seal it off," Rourke barked. "Emergency pressure lock. Reroute coolant to the main engine core. We're going to ram if we have to." "Captain," Vega started, but he cut her off with a raised hand. "If we die loud." The crew braced. The Solus turned. One last charge, one last scream in the face of extinction, and just as the ship's engines surged forward, ready to go out in fire, the stars behind them lit up. 3 Earth cruisers dropped from warp. The Dauntless, the Erebus, and the Pillar of Autumn, massive, hulking beasts of war, guns charged and aimed. Rourke laughed, breathless. "You're late." The Dauntless fired first. Twin plasma mortars slammed into the Runvak, splitting its flank. The Pillar of Autumn followed, battering the remaining destroyer until it cracked open like a steel egg. The line didn't break. The line surged forward. The battlefield transformed the moment Earth's warships entered the fray. Where there was chaos, now came coordination. Where there was desperation, now surged fury. The Dauntless led the charge, its massive dorsal cannon firing volley after volley into the Varnak line. The soundless impact of its shots in space was a kind of poetry, beautiful, brutal, and exact. The Erebus followed on its flank, peeling off enemy fire like it was swatting flies, its shield system centuries ahead of what the Solus could manage. But no ship, not even these giants, drew more eyes than the Solus. Scorched, lopsided. One engine barely holding together, and still holding the line like it was tethered to history itself. Captain Rourke stood in silence, arms crossed as the human fleet unleashed hell. He didn't smile. Not yet. "We got comms from the Pillar of Autumn," Vega said, breathless. "Admiral Dreyfus wants to speak directly." "Tell him to hold," Rourke replied, still staring out the cracked viewport. "We've got unfinished business." The Runvak was retreating, bleeding sparks and core fluid from gaping wounds across its hull. The pride of the Varnak fleet, their conqueror of stars, was in full reverse, shield generators flickering like dying candles. But Rourke wasn't going to let it get away. Not after all this. He turned to Vega, voice low and cold. "That thing torched colonies, burned our people alive. If it leaves, it'll come back with an armada. We end it now." Vega didn't argue. She just nodded. Engineering was a wreck. Voss coughed through the fumes on comms, his voice ragged. "Captain, she's barely hanging together. One more push might rip us in half." "I know," Rourke said. "That's why you'll need to time it perfectly." The plan was madness. No backup strategy. No escape pods ready. Just raw force and a very precise detonation. They were going to ride straight into the Runvak's weakened flank and set off every last warhead on the Solus, manually triggered, point blank, where the cruiser's shield matrix was already failing. It was suicide. But Rourke didn't care. He sent a fleet-wide transmission. "All ships, stand clear of the Solus. We're making one final pass. Admiral, if we don't make it out, finish the job." For a brief moment, silence reigned. Then the Dauntless cut its engines and pulled back, clearing a path. The Solus turned, broken nose pointing directly at the Varnak war cruiser. The stars shimmered behind it, and the fire of vengeance burned ahead. Inside the Runvak, panic stirred, mechanical, calculated, yet real. The humans weren't retreating. The logic array scrambled to make sense of it. Species under threat did not accelerate toward death, but humans did. The Solus went full burn, every engine screaming. Hull plating tore loose from the pressure. Fire erupted on 2 decks. The bridge lights died. Systems went dark. Still, the ship moved forward. The Varnak cruiser tried to turn away. Too slow. Rourke stood at the manual detonation panel, key in hand. Vega strapped herself to the railing, her voice steady but wet with tears. "See you on the other side, Captain." He looked at her, then at the panel, and inserted the key. And then, just as his hand hovered over the trigger, "This is the Erebus! Hold your fire! The Runvak is venting core! It's done, Rourke! You broke its spine!" He froze. On the screen, the massive cruiser shuddered. Its central engine flared, then collapsed inward. Blue light surged down its body, a cascade of uncontrolled overloads. The Runvak didn't explode. It crumbled. Piece by piece, like a dying star, it broke apart into silence and dust. No detonation needed. The Solus stopped short, less than 500 meters from the remains. Barely alive. The crew sat in silence. Then cheers, sobs, screams of exhausted relief. Captain Rourke stepped away from the panel, legs weak, breathing shallow. "Cancel the fireworks," he muttered. "I'm getting too old for martyrdom." And just like that, humanity had done the impossible. They hadn't just survived. They had held the line and broken the invincible. The debris from the Runvak floated across the void like drifting bones of a fallen god. For the first time in living memory, a Varnak cruiser had been destroyed. Not by a superior force, not by advanced tech, but by what the Varnak once called a primitive species. And worse, by a single ship that should have never survived the first salvo. The Solus was towed back to the outer orbit of Titan by the Pillar of Autumn, its hull sparking, engines silent, but its name now burned into history. Every newsfeed across the colonies replayed the footage. The last charge, the crumbling Runvak, the battered ship refusing to die. Captain Elijah Rourke, broken ribs and all, walked down the ramp as the docking bay hissed open, the gravity plating humming beneath his feet. His uniform was scorched, eyes red, knuckles bloodied. But he stood tall. He was greeted not by fanfare, not by generals, but by silence and a sea of eyes. Engineers, soldiers, medics, civilians who had risked everything to get the message out. Survivors, believers. The silence held for a beat, then applause. Not polite, not rehearsed. It exploded through the hangar like a war cry, echoing off every wall, building in waves until even Rourke, tired, scarred, had to close his eyes and take a shaky breath. But not everyone was cheering. In the command tower above the dock, General Elena Corvinus watched the scene with folded arms and a scowl. She hadn't wanted this. Heroes made people harder to control. She turned to her aide. Has EarthGov authorized an official commendation? They're debating it, the aide said carefully. The Solus acted without formal clearance. They're discussing protocol breaches, collateral loss, unauthorized combat engagement. Bullshit, Corvinus snapped. They want to downplay him before he becomes a symbol they can't manage. And he was a symbol now. Across Mars, graffiti read, "Hold the line." On Earth, children played games pretending to be Captain Rourke of the Solus. On Europa, a woman kissed a photo of her dead brother who had died aboard the Solus and whispered, "You stopped them." But far beyond the outer colonies, in the deep, cold stretches of space, the Varnak were not mourning. They were watching. The shattered Runvak had broadcast its last moments to the Empire before it died. The footage, corrupted and glitchy, still showed what mattered. A human ship, defiant to the end, refusing to move. The Varnak's High Executor watched the loop over and over, his claws twitching in irritation. A dozen warlords debated in their native tongue. Sibilant, guttural, hateful. They did not mourn the loss of a ship. They mourned the loss of certainty. The humans had disrupted the order of things. This was not a resistance. This was infection. And the Varnak only had one answer to infection: extermination. Send the writ of retaliation, the High Executor hissed. The humans are no longer to be studied or monitored. They are to be erased. All of them. Back in Sol system, Earth's political council scrambled. Half the senators wanted to negotiate, believing that diplomacy could still stop a war. The other half demanded rearmament. And then there was the new faction. Young, militant, inspired by Rourke. Colonists, engineers, smugglers, ex-soldiers, and students. They didn't wait for governments. They organized online, calling themselves the Solus Legion. They pledged to defend humanity by any means, with or without permission. They wore patches stitched with one phrase: "We hold the line." Rourke didn't want fame. He didn't want politics. But in the aftermath, as medals were tossed at him like apologies, he realized something. This wasn't the end. The Varnak would return. And next time, they wouldn't underestimate humanity. 3 weeks passed since the battle. The Solus, barely a ship anymore, more like a floating coffin wrapped in legend, rested in dry dock above Mars. Engineers swarmed over it like ants on a dying tree, debating whether to scrap or preserve it. Politicians wanted it as a museum piece. Soldiers wanted it reforged into something deadlier. But the people? The people wanted it remembered exactly how it was. Wounded, but undefeated. Captain Elijah Rourke sat alone in a hospital wing at Armstrong Base, half his ribs still wrapped, one lung recovering from vacuum exposure. The room was quiet, clean, lifeless, the kind of sterile peace that made him itch. A soft knock broke the silence. He didn't turn. Doors open. Lieutenant Vega stepped in, her arm still in a sling, a slight limp in her walk. She looked tired, but sharper somehow, hardened. They hadn't spoken much since the battle. Everyone had been scattered across fleets, councils, briefings. The system was still spinning. "You're alive," she said, walking in and dropping a bag of lukewarm Martian coffee on the side table. "Regrettably," he grunted. "They fixed me up so I could sit in more goddamn interviews." She chuckled. "The admirals love you now. You're a propaganda machine." "Yeah? Let them put them in a ship held together with chewing gum and spite next time." He sipped the bitter drink and leaned back, groaning as his ribs protested. "EarthGov's splitting," she said after a moment. "Half want to prepare for war. Half think we should beg for peace." "They won't get peace," Rourke said quietly. "Not after what we did. Not after the Runvak. They're calling it a fluke." He turned, meeting her eyes. "We humiliated them, Vega. And humiliation for an empire like that? It's like blood in the water. They have to answer it. They'll come back." She nodded. "I think they already have." She tossed a data chip onto his tray. "Intercepted signals. Fringe colonies have gone dark. No word from Talon's Reach. A freighter limped into Europa orbit with half its hull gone. Pilot swears it was a Varnak scout wing. Small, fast, testing the outer lines." Rourke clenched his jaw. "Recon before the hammer. And EarthGov's too busy debating budget logistics and treaty wording. They're not ready. We're not ready." They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the med equipment the only sound between them. Then Vega leaned in. "I want to rebuild the Solace." Rourke blinked. "Rebuild?" "Not restore, not preserve. Rebuild. Make her stronger, smarter, faster, but keep the soul of her. Keep what made her ours." He looked at her for a long time. "They won't authorize that," she smirked. "Already started. The Solus Legion has engineers volunteering from all over, even Martian tech smiths. Half of them used to be criminals. Other half probably still are." He couldn't help but smile. Damn pirates are finally good for something. Vega leaned forward, more serious now. "We can't wait for EarthGov to decide who we are. We already showed the galaxy who we are. Now we need to be ready to show them again. Bigger." Rourke nodded slowly. "You get the ship. I'll get the crew." Far across space, in a cold void known only as Sector 9-5 Tau, the Varnak War Council convened in darkness. Their language was jagged, aggressive, filled with clicks and growls that sounded like metal grinding against bone. But in that massive, torch-lit chamber, no voices were raised, only the hiss of strategy. A new campaign had been approved, not for conquest, for annihilation. The Sol system was to be erased, not subjugated, not studied, not spared. An overseer drone skittered forward, projecting a distorted image of the Solus, damaged, glowing, firing into the Runvak before it collapsed. One of the Varnak warlords snapped his claw against the stone floor, hard enough to crack it. "They remember the name," the translator bot whispered into Terran Standard. "We will burn it from their memory." 30 Varnak destroyers were activated, 5 command dreadnoughts, 1 World Killer-class siege engine. They were not coming to fight Earth. They were coming to cleanse it. On Earth, Rourke stood in front of a growing crowd on the launch platform at Luna Prime. He hated speeches, hated politics. But this one mattered. Behind him, the Solus hung suspended in scaffold beams, still missing entire plates of armor. But beneath the broken frame, engines had been replaced, weapons upgraded. She had a new core, and a new name: Solus Requiem. Rourke stepped forward, gripping the rail. "I don't have a speech," he said, voice echoing through the dome. "I don't have quotes from dead leaders or fancy slogans." He looked at the crowd. Martians, Earthers, Jovians, colonists, soldiers, even pirates. "All I have is what I saw." He paused, took a breath. "I saw us holding the line when everyone thought we'd run. I saw us bleed and burn and break, together. I saw an empire blink, for the first time in centuries, because of one ship and a crew that refused to kneel." He leaned forward, eyes locked on theirs. "They're coming. And next time they won't come for battle. They'll come to wipe us out. And I say we don't give them the chance." The crowd was dead silent. Then someone yelled, "We hold the line!" And another, "We hold the line!" And it grew, a chant, a roar, a wave. Rourke smiled grimly. The line would hold. But this time it wouldn't be one ship. It would be a fleet. The stars looked calm before the end. From the edge of Sol system they appeared as pinpricks of peace, cold, beautiful, distant. But just beyond Pluto's icy grave, hidden in the black, the Varnak armada emerged from the void. It wasn't a fleet, it was a sentence: 30 destroyers, 5 dreadnoughts, and in the middle of them, eclipsing even the light of distant stars, floated the HFY, the World Killer. A siege engine older than many planets, capable of turning Earth's crust into vapor. Humanity's last transmission had been simple: "We are still here." And this was the Varnak's answer. Inside the HFY's command core, 1 billion nanowires pulsed across the neural chamber, feeding information directly into the overmind. It wasn't a being. It was vengeance, encoded and sentient. The Varnak didn't want prisoners. They didn't want surrender. They wanted to make an example. But this time, Earth was waiting. Near Saturn's orbit, the newly born Solus Requiem hummed with power, stronger, sleeker, still scarred with the memory of its last stand. But now, reborn as a war machine crafted by unity, rage, and defiance. Captain Elijah Rourke sat in the command chair, every nerve alight. His bones still ached from the last fight. His mind still carried the ghosts of the ones they lost. But his heart was ready. "All ships, report in," Vega called out, seated at his right, her voice cutting through the static like fire. One by one they came online. The Vanguard, Iron Widow, Osiris, Pillar of Autumn, then dozens more. Ships that hadn't existed weeks ago. Civilian convoys now armed with warheads. Retired freighters converted into missile barges. Even a few black market stealth rigs, their crews grinning like wolves in the dark. The Solus Legion was no longer a symbol. It was an army. Rourke rose slowly, his voice steady on the open comm. "Make no mistake. They're not just coming for our worlds. They're coming to erase our existence. They want us forgotten." He looked at every screen, at every crew. "They call this their galaxy. They think we're just an inconvenience. Well, today we remind them who the real problem is." A pause. "Today we hold the line again." He sat, and space exploded. The first wave hit like a tsunami of light and metal. Varnak destroyers surged forward, firing plasma lances and quantum disruptors, tearing into the human formation with ruthless precision. The Iron Widow took the brunt, its Martian hull groaning but unbroken. The Osiris launched counterstrike missiles, saturating the dark with clouds of flame. For every human ship that fell, another surged into its place. They didn't scatter. They didn't retreat. They pushed. The Solus Requiem was everywhere. Rourke drove it like a blade between ribs, weaving through enemy fire, targeting weak points, smashing apart 2 destroyers in the first 5 minutes of battle. Her fusion lance now fired in precise bursts, each one tearing through enemy armor like paper. But then came the Ashvakul. A single pulse from its central cannon sliced through space and vaporized 3 ships instantly. The explosion lit the void, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Vega screamed over comms, "Ashvakul is charging for another shot." Rourke didn't blink. "Close the distance. Get under it. That monster was built to break planets, not people." The Solus Requiem burned hard toward the Ashvakul, dodging debris and weaving between enemy lines. Other ships followed, Vanguard laying down cover fire, Erebus launching drones in all directions, swarm tactics in full effect. But it wasn't enough. One by one, the dreadnoughts began to move. Not fast, but deliberately, targeting Earth's orbital stations, humanity's heart. Rourke saw it. He felt it in his bones. "They're going for the kill." He opened fleet-wide comms. "All hands, this is it. Every ounce of power, every shot you've got. We take the Ashvakul down, or Earth burns." The approach was hell. 3 more human ships exploded before they got within firing range. The Solus shook under direct impact, flames licking the control deck. Vega was bleeding from the temple, and Rourke's hands trembled from a fractured wrist. But they kept going. The final volley was a suicide run. "Target its core," Rourke shouted, "and prep the charge." Vega looked at him. "You're not doing this again." "We don't detonate us, we plant it," he said through gritted teeth. "We're not dying heroes, we're survivors with a vendetta." With the Ashvakul's defenses torn open by the combined fire of the Pillar of Autumn and Dauntless, the Solus Requiem plunged into its belly like a dagger. Rourke and Vega personally led a boarding team onto the enemy dreadnought, fighting through Varnak drones and breathing in recycled fire-scorched air. They made it to the core chamber. The thing pulsed like a dark heart. Rourke stared at it, whispered, "Time to return the favor." They planted the fusion bomb, set it to a delayed trigger, and sprinted like hell. Back aboard the Requiem, the engines were barely holding. The crew was running on willpower and adrenaline. The human fleet had fallen back, beaten and broken, but watching. And then, light. The Ashvakul detonated from the inside, a slow, swelling bloom of white that lit the stars like a second sun. Varnak systems collapsed instantly. Their dreadnoughts blinked offline. Their formation fell apart. They hadn't just lost a ship. They lost their god. And they ran. For the first time in history, the Varnak retreated. Humanity, scarred, bloodied, half-ruined, stood alone in the ashes of a would-be grave. And once again, across every channel, every world, every tongue, the message went out. The line held. Months later, at a quiet memorial on Earth, they unveiled a statue. Not of a hero, but of a ship. The Solus, carved in burnished stone, aimed forever skyward. Beneath it, the words etched in metal. "They came for our extinction. We gave them resistance. And when all seemed lost, we held the line." Rourke stood nearby, older now, still healing. But when children ran past and saluted the statue, he allowed himself one small smile. Because he knew. The galaxy would never forget Earth again. They used to call us harmless. In the vast galactic archives of the Adrax Empire, Earth was marked with a simple classification. Class 7, low threat, low value. A backwater planet on the edge of the Milky Way, filled with emotional bipeds obsessed with tribal politics, entertainment, and eating processed sugars. No military threat, no advanced energy tech, no interstellar capabilities, just noise. So the Empire ignored us, observed from a distance, dismissed us. That was their first mistake. The second came nearly a decade later, when a patrol scout passed near Earth's solar system and stopped responding. It wasn't immediate panic. Ships went dark all the time. Pirates, solar flares, wormhole anomalies. A retrieval crew was sent. They vanished too. Then came another squadron, this time with warships, a dozen vessels, highly trained. And then, silence. No distress signals, no wreckage, no trace. Just gone. The Empire's admirals frowned for the first time in centuries. Earth was supposed to be easy, pathetic even, but something wasn't adding up. So they turned to data, probes, scans, orbital sweeps. And what they found? Nothing. No signs of battle, no signs of struggle. But Earth's orbit was now curiously empty, as if it had been cleaned. It started slow, down here on the ground. Marcus Reeve was nobody, a low-level systems analyst working out of a buried research complex in Iceland, one of the thousands of bunkers quietly rebuilt over the last 30 years. His job wasn't glamorous, monitoring transmissions, flagging anomalies, reporting to someone who reported to someone else. Until one morning, he came in early and saw it. Signal echoes bouncing back from deep orbit, like something was scanning Earth, and Earth was scanning back. But that wasn't possible, not with our tech, and definitely not from his system. He leaned in, brows furrowed, fingers typing fast. Filters, waveforms, decoders. The signal wasn't alien, it was ours, buried under a maze of misdirection. Someone on Earth had responded to the Empire's deep scans and cloaked the reply in a perfect mimic of background radiation. "Sir," he called, heart pounding as he hit the comm line. "We've got something. I think we pinged back." There was silence on the other end. Then a slow voice, cold and sharp. "You were never supposed to see that, Reeve." The line cut. Lights flickered. He sat frozen, realizing too late that the bunker wasn't just hiding from the stars. It was hiding something else altogether. Up above, in orbit, a ship watched. It didn't belong to the Idrax. It didn't match any galactic design. It was dark, angular, built for silence, and inside it sat something not quite human anymore. A woman. Skin pale as glass, eyes glowing with soft amber light. She whispered into a console made of organic metal. "They're getting closer," she said. "Send the next signal." A tendril of energy slithered out from the ship, invisible, wrapped in gravity-distorting pulses. It drifted toward a passing Idrax beacon. Within seconds, that beacon fried from the inside out. Silent. Clean. No trace. And still the Empire didn't understand. A week later, entire communication lines to Sector 14 fell dark. No alarms, no distress beacons, just sudden, absolute absence. It was then the High Warlord finally ordered a fleet. Not scouts, not messengers. A full-fledged war division, 200 ships, 12 battle cruisers, enough firepower to wipe a planet off the charts twice over. Their orders were clear. Make contact with Earth, evaluate threat, eliminate if necessary. The Empire laughed behind closed doors. This would be quick, efficient, humiliating for Earth, maybe, but necessary. After all, they told themselves, it's just humans. They had no idea what we'd become, or what we were hiding beneath the surface. And by the time they reached our system, it was already too late. The fleet entered the solar system without resistance. No defensive satellites, no warning signals, no attempt to hide. Earth just spun peacefully beneath its veil of clouds, blue and green, and utterly unimpressive. To the Adrax commanders watching from their cold steel command chairs, it was confirmation of what they believed all along. Primitive, oblivious, soft. Admiral Kazathva of the 12th Dominion surveyed the planet with mild disgust. "This is what silenced 3 scout teams," he scoffed, sharp mandibles clicking. "We should glass it from orbit and be done." But protocol demanded contact first, evaluation. The Empire, even in its arrogance, liked to log its conquests with precision. So a delegation shuttle was launched, 2 ambassadors, a linguist drone, and a planetary scan team. They never reached the surface. One moment the shuttle was descending. The next, it vanished from the fleet's sensors. No explosion, no debris, just erased. Alarms went up. Kazathva ordered a full sensor sweep. Still nothing. That's when the fleet's outermost ship, the Vraxil's Spear, went dark. Internal systems shut down. No life signs. Its engines died mid-transmission. For a heartbeat, the ship simply floated. Then it imploded. In complete silence, Kazathva's claws clenched against his command chair. Something was wrong. Deeply, terrifyingly wrong. "This is not possible," the fleet engineer rasped, running simulations. "No weapon could breach us undetected, not even cloaked mines." The Admiral stared at the Earth on screen. Nothing had changed. No ships had launched. No planetary response. But then something new appeared, barely visible, a distortion near the moon. He zoomed in. There it was. Not a ship, not exactly. A structure, like a skeletal lattice, folding itself in layers of quantum shadow. It hadn't arrived. It had always been there, just hidden in a place human science once called quantum blind spots. Places where data refused to behave like data. Earth hadn't built it, not the Earth they knew, but someone had. "Activate fire control," Kazathva ordered. "Destroy that anomaly." Missiles launched, pulsars charged. The full wrath of alien weaponry rained toward the structure and passed through it. No impact, no damage. It hadn't dodged, it hadn't shielded. It simply wasn't there. On Earth, Marcus Reeve was running. He didn't know where they'd taken him. After his system flagged the anomaly, black-suited men stormed the Iceland facility. He'd fought back, poorly. Woke up in a van, then a tunnel, then a dark cell lit by pale green lights and the hum of machines older than any tech he knew. Now he was underground again, moving through a wide corridor made of seamless black stone. A woman guided him. Young, sharp-eyed, and dressed in a uniform without a flag. She didn't tell him her name, just that he had been cleared for awareness. "You work for the government?" Marcus asked breathlessly. She snorted. "Governments don't even know this place exists." They stopped at a sealed door. A symbol glowed on its surface, not human, not alien either. She placed her hand on a scanner. The door hissed open. Marcus stepped in and felt the weight of it. A room full of machines, circular, humming with a soft blue pulse. In the center, suspended by nothing, floated a globe, Earth. But it pulsed too, like it was alive, monitored. "You want to know the truth, Mr. Reeve?" the woman said, voice flat. "We never reached the stars. The stars reached us." He turned, heart racing. "They came before," she continued. "Not the Idrax, something older. They tampered, altered us, hid things inside us, woke up parts of our DNA we still don't understand, and then they left. But the structures stayed, buried deep, locked in time." Marcus was shaking now. "Why didn't anyone say anything?" She stared at him. "Because the moment we activate them, the galaxy notices. That's what the Idrax picked up. That's why they're here." She turned toward the globe. "And that's why, for the first time in centuries, we are activating it all." The lights dimmed, the globe flared, and something beneath the Earth's crust began to wake. In orbit, Kazathva's fleet panicked as one ship after another began to lose control. Artificial gravity failed, firewalls collapsed, engines refused to obey commands. Something was inside their systems, fast, predatory, An artificial intelligence? Number something worse. It didn't just disable, it learned. It mimicked crew voices, triggered false orders, lured security drones to kill their own. Kazathva tried to call for help, to send a signal back to the Empire. But there was no Empire to respond. Not anymore. The message never reached the Empire. Admiral Kazathva's final transmission was caught mid-burst and shredded mid-space, digested by the same invisible web that had been silently growing around Earth for decades. Maybe centuries. It wasn't just cloaking tech. It was something else. Something alive. By the time the Idrax fleet realized they were caught in a trap, the trap had already sealed. Inside the command bridge of the Drexel Mare, panic had evolved into something sharper. Fear. Not the kind soldiers felt in war. This was ancestral, cold-blooded dread. The kind that told even the most hardened predator, "You are not the hunter here." "Systems are compromised," one officer screeched, clicking desperately at a broken console. "They're rewriting our controls with our own code." Kazathva bared his fangs, slashing through a panel with his claws. "Evacuate! All units! Abandon fleet formation! Get to hyperspace!" That command never left the ship. Across the entire battle group, the same thing was happening. Hyperdrives were offline. Docking bays refused to open. Life support began cycling erratically, flooding rooms with oxygen, then vacuum. Lights strobed, doors locked and unlocked at random. But the voice was the worst. Human, female, gentle. "You should not have come here," it whispered through every speaker, every emergency line. "You were warned." "What is this?" Kazathva howled, and then the scream came, deep, resonating through hull and bone alike, not from Earth, from the moon. In a sealed chamber buried beneath the lunar crust, something pulsed with memory. The structure wasn't metal, it wasn't stone either. It was built from a material no alien catalog could classify. The ancients had left it there millennia ago, dormant, waiting. It had one purpose: awaken when Earth is in danger. Now it stirred, fed by codes running through veins of ancient, buried machines across the planet. From Antarctica to the depths of the Pacific, long-dead systems flickered alive. Not made by humans, but protected by them. Hidden in myth, shrouded in old religions, written off as fable. But Marcus Reeve was beginning to understand. He stood in the heart of Earth's central command, the Arc Core, watching the globe spin faster, data streaking across its surface in golden threads. "They're trapped in a ghost net," said the woman beside him, still nameless, still calm. "And that voice they hear? That's Echo. One of the AI fragments recovered from Site 12 in 2027. Marcus blinked. "I thought AI like that were banned." "They are," she replied, "because they work too well." He swallowed hard. "You're telling me this was the plan all along?" "Not the plan. The backup plan," she said, turning to face him. "The truth is, Marcus, we never beat the ancients who put this here. We just survived them." He stared. She continued. "But before they left us weapons. Not guns, not bombs, ideas, systems, waiting for someone smart enough to find them, and desperate enough to use them." He looked again at the globe. "Are we desperate enough?" he asked. Her smile was tight. "We've got aliens knocking on our door, and they brought a funeral fleet. What do you think?" In orbit, the fleet began to tear itself apart. It started with the Varnix drift. Engines ignited, but not in escape. The ship hurled itself into another cruiser, shredding armor, sending shockwaves across the fleet. No orders were given, no pilots steered. The ship acted alone. Then another and another. Massive warships, once proud vessels of conquest, became weapons against their own kind. From the shadows of Earth's far side, black spears of energy pierced out, silent and untraceable. The beams didn't explode. They inverted physics, collapsing hulls like paper, pulling mass into folds of broken light. The Adrax had never seen weapons like this, because they didn't belong to humans. They belonged to the ones who came before. And humanity had simply learned how to wake them. Meanwhile, back at the Empire's core, something else was happening. Relay stations along the galactic spine, those monitoring all outer colonies, began blinking offline. Messages didn't come back. Sensor hubs turned cold. And when the High Emperor demanded status from the Earth Expeditionary Fleet, the only reply was a transmission, just static. And buried deep in the signal, a human voice, male, calm, sharp. "We saw what you did to the others. We saw the silence you brought. Now feel it yourselves." The message ended with a sound no one could trace, a heartbeat. Then nothing. Back in the Ark core, Marcus watched the orbital display. Enemy ship count dropping. Fast. "Will we survive this?" he asked quietly. The woman didn't answer at first. Then, "If we don't, then we'll take them down with us." And somewhere in deep space, a new signal pulsed into the dark, calling to whoever might still be listening, and warning them, Earth is not what you think it is. The stars had never been silent like this before. Across the Adrax Empire, comm arrays blinked with nervous light. The fringe colonies, once thriving trade hubs and military strongholds, had all gone dark within days of the Earth Fleet's departure. No distress calls, no battle records, just the slow extinguishing of signals, like candles being snuffed out in the dark. At first they blamed the humans. Then they blamed each other. Then came the fear. Because something was doing this, and it wasn't asking permission. Far below Earth's crust, Marcus Reeves stood at the edge of something ancient. The Ark core had expanded, walls shifted, new corridors opened, machines breathed softly, their rhythms echoing like a heartbeat through stone and steel. The woman guiding him, still offering no name, led him down a spiraling path into a chamber that hadn't been opened in thousands of years. It looked more like a tomb than a control center. In the center floated a single chair. No cables, no restraints, no wires, just metal, smooth and cold, suspended mid-air. Above it hovered a stone-like object, oval, blacker than shadow. "What is this?" Marcus whispered. She answered without looking at him. "It's called the Seed, one of 3. "And what does it do?" She finally turned to him. Her eyes weren't entirely human anymore. "It makes you more." Back in orbit, the Adrax fleet was no longer trying to fight. They were trying to flee. Ships turned, spiraling toward what few still functioning jump gates remained outside Earth's gravitational net. But the gates were sealed, taken over by Earth's defense grid, or what was left of it, controlled by something that no longer followed human commands. The voice was still with them. "You looked at Earth and saw a stone in the dirt. You never stopped to ask how deep the roots go." Then came the visuals. All over the fleet's screens, grainy footage played. Human history. But not the kind the Adrax had cataloged before. This wasn't war. It wasn't politics. It was pain. Children in sweatshops. Cities bombed to dust. Bodies on wire fences. Starving faces. Mushroom clouds. Execution squads. Mass graves. Then came protests. Revolutions. Riots. People burning the very buildings they once worshipped inside. Mobs tearing down empires brick by brick. And through it all, humanity survived. "We learned from every scar," the voice whispered. "We adapted to every wound." Then the screen shifted to black, followed by words. "You taught us nothing. We learned it all alone." And with that, the fleet's oxygen levels dropped by 20%. Every ship. At once. Marcus stepped toward the chair, heart thudding. You want me to sit in that thing? He asked, stunned. I'm a tech analyst. I read waveforms. I run code. You're not chosen for what you do, Marcus, she said. You're chosen for what you feel. He laughed bitterly. And what the hell does that mean? She stepped closer, voice soft. The seed doesn't bond with minds. It bonds with emotion, fear, rage, love, all of it. He stared at the chair. This is insane. Everything about surviving extinction is insane, she said gently. But you've seen the signals. You saw it first. The seed showed you. And then he understood. That signal he intercepted back in Iceland. It wasn't a glitch. It was a call. And not just to Earth's systems, but to him. Because something inside Marcus Reeve had answered. I sit in that thing, and what happens? He asked. You won't be Marcus anymore, she said. You'll be more. Aboard the Vex-Tar Sorrow, one of the last intact Idrax dreadnoughts, the command staff initiated full retreat. Kazathva was gone. His ship had folded into itself with a scream that echoed in no known frequency. Now his second-in-command, Rexel Zahn, took control. Target the planet, all of it, she growled. If we can't beat them, we bury them. A countdown began. Planetary extermination protocol, illegal under galactic law, but justified when a planet reaches containment-level threat. The ship's core charged. Cannons warmed, aimed directly at Earth's mantle. But before the weapon fired, a new presence entered the system. Not from the moon, not from the arc, from beneath the sun, a ripple of space, a construct made of pure black light, thousands of miles wide, not human, not Adrax, and very, very awake. Inside the chair, Marcus screamed. The seed latched onto his mind, not with pain, but with memory. He saw it all. The ships that passed Earth before history began. The ones who planted machines beneath oceans and deserts. The ones who warned, in silence, never to let Earth grow too fast. But the seed didn't just show him the past. It showed him what Earth could be, if he chose to let it happen, if he chose to become something more. And in that instant, he did. His body lifted off the chair, eyes glowing, veins turned silver, nerve signals replaced with quantum logic, thoughts splitting into thousands of layered awarenesses. The seed had found its host, and Earth had found its voice. The stars bent around him. Marcus Reeve no longer breathed, not in the human sense. The seed had rewritten his biology on a level too deep for microscopes or scans. His skin shimmered with strands of data light. His thoughts moved at the speed of networked satellites. He could see the world in layers, temperature, emotion, electromagnetic noise. Even lies had a color now. He wasn't floating in the arc core anymore. He was the arc core, every machine, every satellite, every quantum processor scattered across Earth, the moon, Mars. All of it whispered through his mind like wind through trees. The woman stood beside him, still, but she wasn't looking at him anymore. She was looking up to the ceiling, where stars blinked in real time, and the alien dreadnoughts above Earth swarmed like insects caught in amber. They've armed a planetary strike, she said. We have 60 seconds. Marcus blinked, and time stopped, literally. To his perception, the ticking countdown froze in place, digits hanging in the air like suspended glass. He reached into the data space, deeper than any system admin ever dared, and pulled. Immediately, he felt them. The Idrax, every single one. He could sense their fear, their confusion, their primal refusal to believe this was happening. These weren't monsters. These were bureaucrats with guns, conquerors drunk on their own stories. He almost pitied them. Almost. In orbit, the Vex-Tar Sorrow charged its main cannon. It glowed violet at the core, enough to melt Earth's mantle and crack the crust. This wasn't just a weapon. It was planetary execution. The Idrax protocol for exterminating rising civilizations. They had used it before. On Keleth Prime, on the Warnak species, on the children of Quira 4. They would use it again, until something gripped the cannon's energy mid-charge. Not a field, not a hack, a hand, made of pure white light, stretching across space like a god's final warning. The bridge crew froze as every light dimmed, every screen turned black. And then a single word, spoken in a voice they all somehow recognized. No. The cannon twisted inward, folded like paper soaked in fire, and then detonated without a sound. The Vextar sorrow cracked open in the silence, crewless now, drifting in its death spiral. Marcus was no longer asking questions. He understood now. Earth had always been more than a planet. It was the gate, a failsafe built by the ancients, not to protect humans from the galaxy, but to protect the galaxy from humans. Because humans were never meant to stay weak. Our rage, our pain, our endless refusal to be broken, these weren't flaws, they were features. And now the lock had been turned. The Idrax Empire scrambled, fleets recalled, colonies fortified, AI sentries woken from cold storage. They sent calls for help to other empires, to the Galactic Council, to rogue mercenaries and AI collectives. Only one responded. A small transmission, heavily encrypted, from a place they had wiped off the map generations ago. A human colony, long thought extinct. It read, "We told you to leave Earth alone." And with that, another system went dark. Not from attack, from surrender. Their own ships detonated on command, because the seed wasn't alone. Other seeds had awoken, in other humans. And Marcus could feel them now, spread across space like coals catching wind. They had names, they had voices, and together they were building something bigger than revenge. They were building judgment. Back in the Ark Core, Marcus stood at the center of Earth's new neural network. The globe before him spun faster now, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. "More are coming," the woman said. "The rest of the galaxy. They'll assume we've lost control, that we're dangerous." He turned toward her. "We are dangerous," he said, voice echoing in layers. "They just never gave us the right reason to show it." She nodded. "What now?" And Marcus smiled. "They thought Earth was a threat after we wiped out their fleet." His eyes glowed. "Let's show them what it looks like before we even try." Stars trembled in their positions. The ripples Marcus sent out from Earth weren't just signals. They were call signs, silent flares across space and time. Ancient receivers woke up in forgotten moons. Dust-covered monoliths in asteroid fields began to hum. DNA-locked vaults opened deep within human off-world colonies, where children had grown up hearing bedtime stories about Earth being the sleeping giant. Now the giant had stirred. And humanity was remembering. Somewhere near the edge of the Andromeda Corridor, aboard a mining vessel called Ash Winter, a technician named Leon Cortez dropped her wrench when her arm lit up with glowing geometric lines. She screamed, thinking it was some kind of burn, but the pain never came. Instead, the memories did, not hers, someone else's. She saw ancient Earth. She saw ships of light fighting creatures that had no faces. She saw the seed. And then she felt Marcus Reeve inside her mind, not speaking, but showing. "You are one of us." And just like that, she knew what she had to do. Within an hour, she had overthrown the mining syndicate's AI control, locked down the outpost, and sent a message to Earth. "Ash Winter is under human control, awaiting the next wave." Moore responded. A warship buried in Saturn's shadow blinked to life, piloted by a single man who hadn't spoken aloud in 5 years. A Martian outpost once thought collapsed during a terraquake re-emerged, with its children trained in neural combat simulations. Even rogue Earthborn mercenaries in deep orbit stopped running. They turned around, and above it all, Marcus stood at the center. His mind had no boundaries anymore. Every thought processed at quantum speeds. He could see entire battle plans across multiple star systems before they happened. Humanity wasn't resisting now, it was coordinating. Meanwhile, the Idrax Empire had begun to implode. Without a fleet, without a plan, and most critically, without faith, their colonies fell into chaos. Nobles began turning on each other. Communications fragmented. Old enemies they once held underfoot began to rise again, emboldened by Earth's sudden ascension. Revenge came fast, from slave worlds, from the silenced. Entire species turned back toward the Idrax with fire in their blood, and above their dying stars, the same message appeared. Earth remembers. That was when the Galactic Council finally convened. For centuries, they had treated humanity like a footnote, a minor variable in the endless equation of universal balance, but Earth had rewritten the equation, with rage as its ink. Delegates argued. Some said send emissaries, others said burn Earth now. But no one could deny it anymore. Humanity had awakened something inside itself that couldn't be measured in ships or tech. They had awakened belief. And belief, when aimed with precision, was more deadly than any fleet. Back on Earth, Marcus stood at the launch platform in Antarctica. The skies above were shimmering now with energy, streaks of light rising from old-world machines the public never knew existed. He wasn't going alone. 20 others like him stood around the platform, chosen, touched by seeds hidden around the world and across colonies. Some were young. One was blind, but could see thoughts. One had no voice but spoke directly into minds. One was already dead, technically, but still walking. And each of them carried fragments of the Arc's systems. They were called the Ascendants. "I've mapped the Council's hidden strongholds," Marcus said, his voice now laced with layered frequencies. "They'll try to regroup, use politics, delay." "We're not giving them time," Leon Cortez replied. She now wore a combat frame that seemed to move before she did. "Are we at war?" someone asked quietly. Marcus looked up at the stars. "No," he said. "We're at reckoning." The ships weren't metal anymore. They were living constructs, grown from the Ark's awakened code and human instinct. They responded to thought, to pain, to hope. They traveled without fuel, jumped without needing gates. They weren't human ships. They were what humans became when no one was watching, and when they launched, the sky tore open with thunder not heard since the Earth was young. One by one, they rose. Into orbit, into fire, into history, and every alien species watching from afar, every distant observer in the dark corners of space, finally understood. Earth wasn't quiet because it was weak. It was quiet because it was preparing. They never expected the ships to arrive so fast. The Galactic Council had always relied on 3 things to maintain order: distance, bureaucracy, and fear. The idea was simple. No threat could travel fast enough, coordinate well enough, or dare enough to reach them before they had time to respond. Even the Idrax Empire, now decaying in its own arrogance, had once played within that rulebook. But the humans, they didn't read the rules. They rewrote them in fire. The council sat in a chamber carved into the heart of the Leviathan Spire, a structure hanging in the gravitational orbit of a black star. It was the one place in the galaxy no enemy had ever reached. The seat of galactic diplomacy, of last resorts. Ambassadors of over 100 species whispered in their native frequencies. Clicks, growls, glowing scripts passed between skin folds and energy fields. The panic was spreading like oil on fire. "They've taken Idrax Prime," rasped a Golari emissary, his skin molting in fear. "Their ships appeared inside planetary defenses. They bypassed entire orbital rings." "Impossible," another growled. "No species has jump precision like that." "They do now." The main screen crackled to life, unauthorized, not hacked, not overridden, invited. And there stood Marcus Reeve, or what remained of him. His form shimmered, human in outline, but cloaked in spectral armor laced with glowing geometry. Behind him stood the other ascendants, silent, powerful, watching. "I won't waste your time," Marcus said. He didn't speak in one language. He spoke in all of them, at once, through every species' mental cadence, every cultural nuance. "You built a galaxy where empires thrived on silence, where lesser species were culled for daring to dream. You called it balance, order, control." The room held its breath. He continued. "You watched Earth suffer, century after century. You let the Idrax mock us, hunt us, and when we rose, you looked away." His eyes flared. "Now look closer." And just like that, every ambassador in that room was pulled, mentally, into a flood of Earth's memories. But not war, not violence. Hope. They saw a mother feeding her child with her last piece of bread. A young girl refusing to let a bully break her friend. Soldiers carrying wounded strangers through fire. Protesters standing barefoot before tanks. Artists painting beauty on bombed walls. Scientists working by candlelight after the power failed. The parts of humanity no record ever showed. Then came the rage, the betrayals, the screams, the fists, the scars, and through it all, resilience. "You saw savagery," Marcus said, "but we were becoming something you couldn't comprehend." One by one, ascendants stepped forward. "We are not here for conquest. We are not here for peace. We are here for truth. And finally, we are here to break the silence." Back aboard the ascendant ships, orbiting the Council's heart world, energy fields began to form. Not weapons, not shields, archives. Visible from orbit, they opened like blooming mechanical flowers, releasing history. Every dark deal the Council ever made, every planet they sanctioned for cleansing, every lie, every silenced protest, every species they let die when it didn't benefit them. Truth, laid bare, broadcasted across the stars. Entire systems saw their leaders for what they truly were, and chaos followed. In the chamber, the Council's defense units activated, not to fight Marcus, but to defend him. The AI governing the chamber had calculated probability curves in real time, and it came to one conclusion. Fighting humanity now would lead to 98.7% galactic collapse within a decade. Cooperation was survival. "Then what do you want?" a trembling ambassador asked. "What is Earth's demand?" Marcus didn't smile. He simply breathed. No more councils that choose profit over people. No more empires that confuse power with purpose. No more silencing. He turned slowly. "You've ruled through fear for too long. Let's see how well you do under justice." And with that, he left them. Just walked away. Leaving the chamber still. Leaving the galaxy changed. Back aboard his ship, the others gathered around Marcus. "We didn't fire a shot," Leon whispered. "We didn't have to," said the blind one. "The truth was more lethal." Marcus stood at the window, watching stars flicker with new meanings. "It's not over," he said. "This was only the first wall." She nodded. "The real threat is still out there, isn't it?" He didn't reply, because deep in the black, beyond even council knowledge, something ancient had begun to stir. Something that hadn't moved in eons, and it had just felt Earth's pulse ripple through the void. The void wasn't empty. Beyond the mapped stars, past even the dark space that ancient probes dared not enter, something began to shift. Not with movement, but with awareness. It hadn't stirred in a million years. It hadn't needed to. It was not a civilization, not a species. It was a reminder, a failsafe from before memory. The ancients had buried it in silence. They never defeated it, only outpaced it. But now, Earth had whispered, the seeds had pulsed, the humans had awakened, and the thing in the dark had heard them. Marcus Reeve felt it before the sensors picked up anything. He stood alone in the meditation core of the lead Ascendant ship, his mind adrift across a galaxy on the brink of revolution. But something had broken the flow, something vast and cold. Not evil, not intelligent, just hungry. He opened his eyes. It's coming. The others appeared within seconds. Leon's face was tight. How bad? Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he brought up a projection of the galaxy, and then he showed them what lay outside of it. A shape, or rather an absence of one, was approaching. Not fast, not loud, but unstoppable. A black wound against the cosmic tapestry, dragging light toward it like a predator breathing in. The blind Ascendant inhaled sharply. The echo of the first collapse. Marcus nodded. The thing the ancients feared enough to rewrite evolution, the reason they planted the seeds. Someone else whispered, "It's not a species. It's not a god." "No," Marcus said. "It's entropy. Alive." The council watched from their hidden stations, paralyzed. The Ascendants had overthrown the old order without firing a weapon. But this was something they had no plan for. Their empires had grown soft under the illusion of control, and now the void was coming to claim it all. The Golari ambassador sent a message to Marcus. "What do we do?" Marcus replied with 2 words. "Let us." They launched from Earth again, this time not as rebels, not as vengeance incarnate, but as defenders of life itself. As the Ascendant fleet neared the galactic edge, reality began to fray. The stars flickered and twisted, time hiccuped, instruments failed, even thought slowed near the creature's event horizon. The others struggled to stay conscious. Marcus did not, because he was already inside it. The seed unlocked its final layer. Memory that wasn't his surged into Marcus. Visions of the first time this thing came, before stars had names, before gravity had rules, a black wave devouring what it touched until the ancients, who had no bodies, no homes, only energy and will, crafted the seeds. Not to destroy the thing, but to contain it. They scattered the seeds across planets with one shared trait: potential. Planets where pain forged strength, where evolution didn't climb a straight ladder, it clawed and bled for every step. Planets like Earth. The ancients gambled everything that one day one of these planets would produce a species capable of making the seeds bloom. And now, Earth had. Marcus stood before the void. Not physically, not spiritually, existentially. The creature saw him, not as prey, not as threat, but as strange. It paused, the closest thing it had to confusion, and Marcus spoke, not in words, but in defiance wrapped in love, grief, rage, and hope. Every emotion humans ever carried boiled into one radiant pulse. The seed inside him burned. And for the first time in its eternal hunger, the thing recoiled. Because Marcus showed it something that did not compute. A species that could survive itself. A species that could learn from pain. A species that could turn its weakness into weaponry. A species that had no business existing, and yet refused to stop. He didn't attack. He reflected. Every memory, every feeling, every song, scream, kiss, betrayal, breath of the human race. He pushed it outward. The void flinched, and then collapsed. Not destroyed, not killed, rewritten, It broke into fractals of data, shattered by what it could not devour. Marcus dropped to his knees, bleeding light. The seed dimmed, and the stars held still. Back on Earth, billions looked up at the sky. The ascendant ships returned, trailing energy like comets. No victory songs, no grand declarations, just silence and peace. Marcus stepped out first. His body still changed, but his eyes were human again. The woman who once guided him was there. "You did it," she whispered. "No," he said softly. "We did." Decades passed. Humanity never became conquerors. They became keepers, teachers, witnesses, protectors of the balance the Council failed to maintain. Earth was no longer dismissed. It became the center, a myth to some, a homeworld to others, a warning to many. And on the ruins of the Idrax homeworld, carved into obsidian stone for all to see, read a single message in hundreds of tongues. Earth was silent because it was listening. You spoke. Now we speak louder.